It's been a minute since I've made an update on what I've been reading, and so I think we are long overdue. Hello friends, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Kat, and I make videos about books, writing, and other cozy things. Today, my goal is to review as quick as possible the books I've been reading in the past few months. I don't think I've done a proper reading wrap-up since my Draconathon vlog, and even that wasn't a proper wrap-up, but at least you knew what I was reading. So since the month of May, I've been reading 21 books, of which 4 are DNFs, 4 were buddy reads, and 3 were in French. All the rest was in English. Because I don't want this video to be overly long, and also because I'm filming this while my husband is away on an errand, I need to be fairly quick. So I won't be going into too much synopsis details. I might not go into every book, but I will just give you a quick overview of what I've been reading in the past 3 months. In May, I read 7 books and DNF'd 2 more. I listened on audio to I Hope This Finds You Well, which I enjoyed. I think it was quite funny, but the beginning of the book was much more sharp and sarcastic than the rest of the book, and I like that tone quite a bit. So when it shifted, the book was still interesting, was still well written. I enjoyed what was going on, but it was not as funny as I was hoping it to be. So I did enjoy it, but it's not a new favorite. Jaded by LLE. I think I talked about this book in a video at some point. I really enjoyed it. I might get a copy to reread it physically at some point because I thought it was extremely well done. It's a bit of a tough topic, but again, I thought it was handled really well with care and sensitivity, so I really appreciate that. On audio, I also listened to 2 nonfiction books. The first one is Word Slut by Amanda Montell, who has also published a couple of quite famous books, and I did really enjoy this one. I should have taken more notes because I don't have a lot of memory of it, but it's very much about the way the patriarchy seeps into language, and it's very interesting to see how the author debunks some thinking around what is proper language and what isn't, and why she chooses to reappropriate some expressions. For example, y'all, which is sometimes frowned upon a little bit, and she explains why she feels that it's one of the most inclusive way of speaking. I thought that was really interesting, so I do highly recommend this book. The other one, How to Not Fit In, was about neurodivergence. It was quite good, but I didn't really learn anything new. I think it's a good kind of entry-level kind of book. If you don't really know much about autism and ADHD, it might be a good place to start. I felt it was nicely written, quite accessible. You get stories from the authors. If you're new to the topic, it might be an interesting one to pick up. For me, it didn't really add so much more value. I also read The Memory of Animals by Claire Fuller, which was a gift from my good friend Ellen at the Ellen Made Book Club channel for my birthday. It's a kind of dystopian novel happening during a pandemic, and it was quite good. I quite enjoyed it. I read it fairly quickly, so it flowed nicely. You kind of want to figure out what's going on. I don't think it's a new favorite for me because it didn't hit as hard as some other dystopian books that I loved, but I was really curious about this one, so I'm very glad that I read it, and I'm very thankful to Ellen for sending this my way. I also read Blue Sisters by Coco Mellors. This was a buddy read with Chelsea from Libraries and Lattes. I do love stories about sisters, and this one somehow reminded me of Hella Beautiful by Anne Napolitano, which I did love. Unfortunately, this one was not as gripping as I would have wanted. I did not connect with some of the characters. And so because it's very much a character-driven book, it ended up not being really hard-hitting or something that I enjoyed that much. I know that Chelsea also has some mixed feelings about this book. I'm still glad I read it. I was curious about it, so I did appreciate also the buddy read I did with Chelsea. I always love a buddy read, so this was really nice. And it's been a while since I've done one with Chelsea, so I'm glad we did it. But again, not a new favorite. Sorrow and Bliss, though, is definitely a new favorite. I think this will clearly end up in my top books of the year. I already talked about it in my media freakouts, so I won't go into much more details, but yes, I would highly recommend this book. I thought it was really well done. I loved it. Moving on to June, which was a bit of a slim reading month for me. I was a bit in a reading slump and I had a hard time finding books that I enjoyed. So I started the month with Dancers of the Dawn, which I ended up DNFing at maybe like 80% of the book. I just didn't get to the finish line, but I read most of it. The reason I didn't finish it is because it felt a bit too predictable to me. I think this is YA, and I think it showed in the way it was written. It's not a bad book by any means. I think a lot of readers will enjoy it, but for me, I could see a lot of things coming from a mile away, and so it kind of took the fun out of it. Like sometimes I do enjoy kind of trying to guess what's coming and make theories and see if they are true or not, and I'm happy when they're true and I'm happy when they're not because I'm surprised. But for this one, for some reason, it didn't really feel that enjoyable, so I decided to let it go. I think it's going to be a series as well, so I didn't want to invest more time in it. The next one I think is much more of an unpopular opinion, but I also DNF'd I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Hartman. I read it in the original French, and I don't know if the translation in English is doing something phenomenal because everyone seems to love this book and I just couldn't get through it. I was expecting a chilling feminist dystopia, and instead I think this book is more of a philosophical tale. I did hear before going into it that it's quite an open ending. You don't necessarily have explanations for everything, but in reality, I don't think you have explanations for anything. And so it was a bit frustrating because for me, it's not really even dystopia. Like as a dystopia, it's not a good book because nothing really makes sense. And I'm all for open endings and parts of mysteries and having some bits still unexplained, but I still want things to make sense and to be believable. And in this case, for me, that was not the case. I was just baffled by everything that was going on and not understanding how it was making any sense. So that's why I DNF'd it. But again, a lot of people absolutely love this book, so I'm probably the one who is missing something or who had the wrong expectations from this book. I'm kind of sad that it didn't work for me, but that's just how it is. Then I listened to Olive by Emma Gannon. This is a debut novel following a main character who doesn't want to have children, and we see her evolve among this group of friends and dealing with the aftermath of a relationship with a man that she very much loved, but they wanted different things. He wanted children and she doesn't want them. So in theory, this should be the perfect book for me. It's actually very close to some writing project I've had in mind for quite a while. And so I was very curious to read it, and I did quite enjoy it. I think it's a good book, but for someone who is child-free by choice, who has thought about this topic quite a bit, who understands the different arguments that people will oppose to it or kind of the reactions that you can expect, this book felt a bit like a checklist of the different things the author wanted to include and just making sure she was hitting every mark. And so for me, it didn't feel surprising, or it didn't feel that original because, again, I'm very familiar with this topic. I think it's a very, again, personal reason why I did enjoy the book but didn't love it. I think for some people for whom it might be a bit newer, who are questioning their desire to be parents, for example, it might be a very, very impactful read. So I would still recommend it if you're curious about it. For me, I was slightly disappointed because I wanted more from this book. I can't even exactly say what, but I wanted something more that I didn't get. And it's probably a bit unfair because I was putting a lot of expectations into this book that it never promised to give me. So again, I think it's very much a me thing and not really a problem from the book itself. And then finally, I listened to Bright Young Women by Jessica Knoll. I've heard so many good things about this book, and I think the hype is very much justified. I think it's a very strong and solid book. The beginning is absolutely chilling and masterfully done. Like, I loved it. I was hooked. And as the book goes on, I kind of slowly not lost it, but I was not as excited or as invested toward the end of the book as at the beginning. That being said, I still think it's a very solid book. I think it's an important topic. I think it's very well done, and I loved the very obvious and loud feminist approach. I think, again, it's an excellent book, so I would highly recommend. Moving on to my July reads, which was a much more successful month in terms of reading for me. I did find some books that I really loved. So let's start with maybe the less successful one, Death of the Author. This was a buddy read that I did with Caitlin from Spill the Reads. She has a whole video about it, which I will link in the description below if you're curious to hear her thoughts. I was expecting a really cool, really ambitious meta sci-fi book, and I think it was very ambitious, but it's not really sci-fi. It's more of a literary fiction with some meta elements in it. That was definitely in there, and the sci-fi is part of that meta thing. So basically you are following an author who is writing a sci-fi book, which ends up being a massive success. So the sci-fi elements is mainly in that book, even though you have a tiny bit in the main thread. But if you're expecting a sci-fi book and you're like a hardcore sci-fi fan, be warned, this is not it. From the beginning already, my expectations were a bit off. I think it's also very much due to the marketing of the book, because it really shows as a sci-fi book. The author is very much known in the speculative literature realm, so I think that it's not entirely on me. It was indeed very ambitious, and I know that a lot of people do love this book. I think it's a bit either or, like you love it or it's really not your thing. And for me, unfortunately, I felt that it missed the mark on a few fronts. So I didn't really enjoy it that much, but it was really, really fun to discuss it and just dissect it with Caitlin and to come up with theories and expectations of just like what I was hoping would happen, or thinking that due to this clue or this line, I was expecting this to happen and all of that. So that part was actually really fun, even though I didn't enjoy the book as I would have wanted to. I also listened to quite a few audiobooks in July. The first one is Guiding Emily. I've heard very good things from this book, especially around the blindness representation. I've heard that it's very, very good. So I was curious to pick it up. I think I enjoyed this book mainly for the representation side of things. I was really eager to learn more about the life of a blind person, what goes into the training of a guide dog. And so I did learn a lot from this book, even though there are still aspects that left me wanting more. So I did turn to YouTube to find out things that I didn't get answers from the book. So overall, I did enjoy it quite a bit. I think it was a fun read. It didn't rock my world though, so I wouldn't say it's a new favorite either. Then I listened to Kakigori Summer by Emily Itami, which was an arc that I got from NetGalley. And it's the story of three sisters, one of whom is an idol in Japan, and she is suddenly taken into this scandal that's going all around the world. And her two sisters are coming together to support her during this difficult time. I did really enjoy this. As I mentioned about Blue Sisters, I love stories about sisters, and so this book, I think, delivered. It was really interesting to see the dynamics between the different sisters, their relationship with their grandma, all of that, the challenges of being mixed race in Japan as well. Overall, I thought it was a very touching story and I really enjoyed it, so I would highly recommend. Next, Her Many Faces was a recommendation I got from Ellen's channel. And I don't usually read thrillers or kind of mystery books, but I actually really enjoyed this one. So we have this character, Catherine Cole, who is suspected of murder, and you get the perspectives of 5 different men who are linked to her in different ways. So her dad, a lawyer, a journalist, and so you get the mystery unfolding and being resolved through those different perspectives. So you get to see her from their perspective, and it's quite interesting because obviously none of them is true and all of them are true in a way. So it's like a puzzle that you need to reconstruct. And I thought it was quite well done. It was quite gripping. I did really enjoy it. I did despise some of those men, but there were also some very satisfying moments in the book. I had some clear expectations for the ending and it didn't fully satisfy me, but I still very much enjoyed the book. So if you're curious or if you like thrillers and mysteries, I think this one was quite a good one. But again, it's not really what I read, so I don't have much of a reference point, but for me, it was a very good one and I had a very fun time with it. La Conquête de l'Espace is a French book that I picked up while I was traveling back from my sister's. It's been a bit of a mess. It's a very long trip and one of my train was delayed because I need 3 trains to get to her place. Anyway, so I had some time to kill. I went to a bookshop and I found that book, which I started reading immediately and I did quite enjoy it. It's a kind of memoir from a French journalist who buys a little house in a village, kind of a bit in the middle of nowhere. And it's her relationship with that place, how it impacts her life, how it helps her reconnect with her grandma, come to terms with her desire to write. It was an interesting read. I did enjoy it. Not a new favorite. And then How Kyoto Breaks Your Heart is also kind of a memoir or like a series of short essays. And the way I've heard about this book is very much the story of the end of a friendship. And this element is there in the book. It's touched upon, but it doesn't feel like it's really the center theme of the book. So again, it's really a matter of expectations. I was really wanting a book about friendship and the heartbreaks that comes with it when a friendship ends. Again, I don't think it's really what the book is about. It's a piece of it, but on that front we're left with so many questions and I don't think the reflections go very much in depth on that topic. So I was a bit disappointed on that front. That being said, there are other topics that are covered in this book that I found very interesting. The author used to work as a tour guide in Kyoto, and so her reflections about what it means to be a guide, what it does to you in terms of like this service mindset. Like there were some things in this book that I deeply related to because I did work a little bit as a guide as well when I was living in Stockholm. And so I thought there were some very interesting nuggets in there that I really enjoyed, but also it wasn't the book that I was expecting and that I was wanting at the time. So I'm a bit conflicted. Like I did enjoy it, but it didn't fully satisfy what I was wanting. And then I read Godkiller and Sunbringer, which are the 2 first books in the Fallen God series by Anna Kanner. I already read the first one with Catherine and the second one with both Catherine and Rochelle at Good Morning Dreamer. I will link their channel in the description. And I love those books. I still need to read the third one, but the first one, I was kind of really blown away. It's been a long time since I've been as excited by a fantasy book, and you can tell in a few places that it's a debut novel. Like, there were some things that were not fully matured, but at the same time, on other fronts, I thought the book was excellent. The world building was so rich and full of interesting details, and I don't know, it felt juicy and delicious and exciting. I think there are so many things the author does really well. It's not a perfect book. I'm talking mainly about the first one. I feel the same about the second one, but I don't want to go into the follow-up because, again, it's a series, so I don't want to spoil anything. But yeah, again, I had such a fun time with it. I was super excited to, again, come up with theories and try to figure out what was going to happen and to really look at the way the story was constructed. It was a delight to read this book, again, despite the small flaws that popped up a few times. Overall, I think Anna Kanner is such a talented writer, and I'm super curious to get to the third installment in the series and to read what she comes up with next. Whew. Okay, so this is starting to be long, but I also wanted to go quickly through my upcoming TBR. I had a whole summer TBR, but to be honest, I've started 2 books on that TBR and didn't really commit to them and just like stopped reading. And I don't think I will finish any book on that list this summer, which is a bit of a shame. But I don't know, I've been following my mood. So for August, I already finished a book. I read this book about endometriosis, which was super interesting, but also infuriating because it kind of covers how late France is on this topic. I think we're like 20 years behind other countries, which is very, very frustrating. And so it was interesting to learn more about this disease, how it impacts women, exactly what it is, because we still, again, are very behind in France, and we still describe it as, I don't even know the word in English. Endometrium, is that the word? Coming out of your uterus and being in other parts of your body when it's not supposed to be, which is actually not true. So again, learned a lot from this, got a bit mad, but also knowledge is power, so it's very good that I read this. And I'm currently reading this book, Platypus, which is a book from my 25 for 2025 list. It's a science history book, and I'm about halfway through. I'm trying to push through because it's the only book about platypus that I own, and the only one that seemed interesting that I found. I'm surprised that there are not more books about platypus, or I can't find them. But so I really wanted to read about this animal because I love platypus. I think it's such a cool animal, but the book is a bit dry and tedious, to be honest. So I'm, again, trying to push through, but I'm not sure if I'm gonna finish it, so we will see. But after that, I have some exciting plans. I have a bunch of buddy reads planned, and I'm so excited because I do love a buddy read. I think I get so much more out of the books when I read them with someone, because it also forces me to take notes, to distill them in a understandable form, and to formulate my thoughts. So I do have a lot of fun. I love also hearing the thoughts from the person I'm reading with. It's a good bonding activity. And so I do love buddy reads. And so I'm very excited that I will be reading To Shape a Dragon's Breath with the cat bite very soon. I think I'm going to start tomorrow on the train. And it's a book with dragons, obviously, which I'm reading for Draconathon this month, which is an event hosted by Jay Juniper and Soleil Celine, which I've talked about quite a bit on this channel already. And it's also an Indigenous story, or at least the author is Indigenous. So I'm very excited for this one. Then the plan is to read the second book, or to reread rather, the second book in the Mirror Visitor series. I read I reread the first book with Steph Morgan back in October last year, so it's been a while. And so we wanted to continue the series together, and well, it took a while, but we're getting there. So this is also planned for August. And then I already talked quite a bit about the series. I definitely want to get to the third book in the Fallen God series by Hannah Kanner, which I will likely be buddy reading with Catherine again. Then moving on to the end of August, beginning of September, I have plans to read the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin with Chelsea over at Libraries and Lattes. I've heard so many good things about this series. I think it's a modern classic at this point, and so I'm really looking forward to it. Then I have Blood of a Bright Heaven by M.L. Wong, which I will be buddy reading with Melanie over at A Dark Corner of the Library. I don't even really know what it's about, but I've heard so many good things about it. I'm quite curious about the work from this author, and this was a present for my birthday from Rochelle at Good Morning Dreamer, so I'm also very keen to pick it up and see what all the hype is about. And then finally, also for September, I have plans to read A Darker Shade of Magic by Vicky Schwab with Bonnie over at Bonnie Nicole. So it's a lot of fantasy coming up, which is pretty cool. But I also need to make some progress on my 25 for 2025 list because I'm starting to be behind. So I need to fit some of those books in as well. So that's it for today. All the books I've been reading recently and the ones I'm looking forward to reading in the next coming weeks. Let me know in the comments below if you read some of those books, what you thought of them, what are your reading plans for the rest of the month as well. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye!